The cobblestones of Rue de Fleur in Lyon gleamed under the soft glow of gas lamps, their flames flickering like hesitant stars against the encroaching dusk. It was late September, and the air hummed with the earthy tang of ripening chestnuts from the vendors' carts and the faint metallic whisper of the Saône River nearby. Elise Moreau, at 58, had come to cherish these twilight strolls through the old quarter. They were her rebellion against the sterile precision of her days as a conservator at the Musée des Beaux-Arts, where she spent hours coaxing faded oils back to life, brushstroke by careful brushstroke. Tonight, her feet carried her past the familiar patisseries and bouchons, the ache in her left knee, a souvenir from a fall 2 winters past, a dull companion to her thoughts. Widowhood had reshaped her world 3 years earlier, when Henri's heart gave out mid-sentence during a lecture on Impressionist light. The grief had been a tidal wave at first, pulling her under in unpredictable surges. Now it ebbed into a quieter current, leaving her with the habit of solitary suppers and the weight of an empty apartment above the museum. She paused at a small bistro, L'Étoile Filante, its wrought iron tables spilling onto the sidewalk like invitations to linger. The menu chalked on the easel caught her eye. Coq au vin, rich and unhurried, paired with a half carafe of Beaujolais. Why not, she thought, sliding into a chair as the evening crowd began to swell. Couples murmuring over aperitifs. Locals debating the latest scandals in the regional papers. Her meal arrived steaming. The chicken tender and infused with the deep notes of thyme and bacon, but midway through her fork faltered. The portions were generous, as always, and her appetite, once voracious, had shrunk to match her solitude. She poked at the remaining mushrooms, her mind drifting to Henri's stories of his grandfather, a vintner who believed abundance was meant to be shared, not hoarded. A soft rustle pulled her from reverie. Across the narrow street, a figure detached from the shadows of an alley, moving with the deliberate grace of someone unaccustomed to drawing attention. He was young, no more than 28, with the lean build of hardship etched into his frame. Dark curls fell unkempt over a forehead creased by worry lines that seemed too early for his years. In his arms, cradled against his chest like a fragile relic, was a violin case, battered, its latches secured with fraying tape. His coat, threadbare at the cuffs, hung open to reveal a shirt stained with what might have been ink or old rain. He scanned the outdoor diners with eyes that held no plea, only assessment, as if weighing the room's collective indifference. When his gaze landed on Elise, it lingered not with desperation, but with a quiet calculation, like a musician appraising an unfamiliar score. He crossed the street in 3 measured strides, stopping a polite arm's length from her table. "Pardon, madame," he said, his voice carrying the lilt of southern France, perhaps Provence, roughened by disuse. "I see your plate. It goes unfinished. Might I?" He gestured vaguely toward the remnants, his words trailing into the implication. It was a request stripped bare, no embellishments, no practiced sob story. Just the raw edge of necessity. Elise studied him. Up close, the exhaustion in his face resolved into finer details. The faint scar above his left eyebrow, the calluses on his fingers that spoke of strings pulled taut. The violin case swung lightly at his side, a talisman against the chill. She'd fielded beggars before, drunks with slurred tales, pickpockets with honeyed lies, but this was different. There was pride in his stance, a reluctance that bordered on apology, and beneath it, a spark of something else. Creativity, perhaps, or the ghost of ambition. "Of course," she said, her tone steady as she pushed the plate toward the table's edge. "But please sit. Join me for what's left, or more if you'd like." She signaled the waiter with a subtle lift of her hand. The gesture automatic, born of years hosting salon dinners in their old flat. He hesitated, his free hand tightening on the case. "I wouldn't presume. You've already been kind." "Nonsense," Elise replied, her French crisp with the authority of her profession. "Presumption is eating alone when company is offered." "I'm Elise," the waiter hovered, notepad poised. "Another coq au vin, s'il vous plaît, and a glass of the house red." "For my guest." The young man eased into the opposite chair, setting the violin down with reverence as if it were a child. "I'm Luca," he murmured. "And this," he patted the case. "This is my shadow. Keeps me honest." As the food arrived, steaming and aromatic, Luca ate with the deliberate slowness of one relearning trust. Elise watched, noting how his eyes brightened at the first bite, how his shoulders unclenched fraction by fraction. "The bistro's not renowned," she said lightly, "but the chef has a way with reduction sauces. Henri, my late husband, always said it was the time that made it sing." Luca nodded, swallowing thoughtfully. "My nonna made something similar back in Arles. She'd add juniper berries, swear it warded off the mistral winds." A small smile tugged at his lips, fleeting as a grace note. Emboldened by the wine's warmth, he continued, "I came to Lyon 2 months ago. Music Academy scholarship fell through. Funding cuts, they said. Too many dreamers, not enough donors." He shrugged, but the motion carried weight. "I've been busking in the squares, but winter's coming and the crowds thin out. The case," he glanced at it, "it's all I have left of my father. He was a luthier. Taught me that a good instrument doesn't judge your mistakes, just amplifies them." Elise leaned forward, her conservator's eye catching the poetry in his words. "Amplifies the beauty too, no? What do you play?" "Mostly Paganini, capriccios. They suit the streets, fiery, unforgiving." He paused, fork midway to his mouth. "And you, madame? What brings you to dine alone on such a fine evening?" She chuckled softly, the sound surprising her. "Restoring canvases by day. Monet, mostly. His lilies are stubborn. The light fades so easily." As they spoke, the bistro's hum enveloped them. Clinking glasses, bursts of laughter from a nearby table of students. Luca shared fragments. A childhood spent in workshops scented with varnish and rosin. The thrill of his first solo at the Arles Festival. The sting of rejection letters piling up like unsent symphonies. Elise found herself recounting Henri's quirks. His insistence on debating Degas' dancers over breakfast. The way he'd hum Offenbach while sketching exhibition layouts. "You restore more than paintings," Luca said suddenly, his gaze direct. "You see the layers beneath. The why of the fade." Touched, Elise glanced away, toward the river's distant gleam. She thought of her son, Julian, 32 now, ensconced in a Brussels tech firm with his wife and their newborn. What if life had unraveled for him as it had for Luca? The question lingered, unspoken, as the waiter cleared their plates and offered dessert. Tarte aux poires, golden and spiced. Luca declined with thanks, but Elise insisted on a slice to share. Henri believed in indulgence as punctuation, full stops after hard sentences. As they savored the flaky crust and pear's subtle sweetness, conversation turned to dreams deferred. Luca spoke of composing an opera, a tale of wanderers finding harmony in discord. "It's half-formed," he admitted. "Sketches in a notebook I can't afford to lose." "And you?" he asked. "What calls to you beyond the museum's walls?" Elise hesitated. "Travel once. Morocco's markets, Kyoto's temples. But Henri's illness. We stayed close to home. Now I collect postcards from friends instead." She smiled wryly. "Proxies for adventures." The bistro's lights dimmed as closing neared, casting long shadows across the table. Luca rose reluctantly, slinging the violin case over his shoulder. "Thank you, Elise, for the meal, the ear. It's been a nocturne in daylight." "Wait," she said, fishing a slim card from her purse, her museum lanyard embossed with gold. On the back, she scribbled a name and extension. "Call this number tomorrow. As for Madame Duval, our events coordinator, the museum hosts chamber recitals, intimate affairs in the sculpture garden. She's always scouting fresh talent. Tell her I sent you. Not as charity," she added firmly, "but as an audition. Paganini deserves a proper stage." Luca took the card, his fingers brushing hers. Warm, calloused, alive with potential. "Why?" "You owe me nothing." Elise met his eyes, seeing echoes of her younger self, bold, adrift in Paris ateliers, salvaging a career from rejection slips. "Because 29 years ago, Henri and I were starving artists in Montmartre. Rent due, canvases blank. A gallery owner, old Monsieur Lefebvre, gave me a corner in his salon show. Not out of pity, but faith. He said art isn't hoarded. It's passed like a flame. Tonight, you reminded me of that spark." Tears welled in Luca's eyes, unchecked for a breath before he dashed them away. I'll call, promise." As he melted into the night, violin case swinging like a pendulum, Elise settled her bill and wandered toward home. The streets felt less empty, the autumn air laced with possibility. She thought of Julian, dialing his number under a street lamp. "Papa, everything all right?" "Just reflecting, mon fils. On flames and what they illuminate." 6 months later, as spring unfurled its tentative greens along the Rhone, a parcel arrived at the museum, a sheaf of handwritten scores, bound in linen, titled Nocturne des Étoiles Errantes. Accompanying it was a program from the previous evening's recital, Luca's name in bold beneath the headline, "Rising Virtuoso Lights Musée Garden." Inside, a note in elegant script, "Chère Elise, your flame caught." The Capriccios danced